What's up world, Drew Marcy here for I Read Your Book, and in this video we're going to teach you how to read books more effectively step by step. As the son of two Harvard educated lawyers with a degree in American literature and culture from UCLA and a full-time educator myself, I'm very passionate about this subject. I say all that not to brag, but to say the content that you're about to consume is going to be step by step, organized with an educator's mind by somebody who's really into the material. So without further ado, how to read books more effectively step by step with I Read Your Book. Step number one is to get an Audible or equivalent audiobook program membership. If there's two things we know about our generation is that we value our time and we value our phones. But funny enough, while we love to multitask, when we're commuting to work, when we're cleaning up around the house, when we're doing laundry, we're not taking advantage of the many audiobook programs that we have available to us often enough. You could be consuming tons and tons of information in books while you're doing other things and getting a lot of books read instead of gossiping or wondering what's for dinner. Many of the things that we do when we're on the road or when we're cleaning up, just getting organized for the day. While Audible does come at a cost, and it is my favorite because the most books are on there, there are many programs like LibriVox that have free audiobooks of some of the greatest books of all time. So however you decide to get access to audiobook programs is your decision, but make sure that you have one. And furthermore, you're going to be reading a lot of these books faster because of step two. Increase the playback speed with which you're listening to these audiobooks. Now, fans of podcasts will already be familiar with listening to a podcast at 2x, but we need to advance that mentality to when we listen to our audiobooks. You could be reading a ton of books in much less time than you are just laying down. And I think one of the reasons that people don't like reading as much is because they envision that you have to do it silently in bed with all distractions off. I can tell you that probably 60% of the books that I read are on Audible or some equivalent audiobook program. And the way I read so much is by increasing the playback speed. Now, if this is your first time experiencing this, I would suggest starting with 1.5x as your playback speed and getting used to that. Go through a couple books that way, and then you'll get more and more comfortable and you can move up to 2x, 2.5x, even 3x. Now, I am no 3x person. I can't lie. I've tried. It's pretty ambitious, but 2x is pretty good. At a 2x speed, you could be reading a 300-page book in something like 6 hours. If you split that between 2 days, between a commute, you've read a 300-page book over the course of 2 days. Of course, some readers are better than others in this case, or if you have somebody who's reading with a heavy regional accent, my example being Gary Vaynerchuk. Love that guy. He reads his own Audible books, super great energy, but he's got that heavy New York, New Jersey accent. And even as a Philly native myself, represent for the East Coast, it's difficult for me to understand him sometimes. So I got to hit the 1.5x for Gary V and people like that. Now, step three, as you read the book, you've started reading the book. As you read the book, try to focus on getting one personal takeaway, one main message that you get that can affect your life positively. Now, when I say a takeaway personal to you, I do not mean what you think the author is trying to communicate. I do not mean something that you would deliver at a conference. I do not mean something that you would say over wine and dinner with your friends. I mean something that emotionally grabbed you in your personal interpretation, much like if you listen to a song, you have your own interpretation, especially in rock music, of what that means to you, and it might be totally different from another person. The reason this is important is you're more likely to remember it and gain a relationship with the book if you're just trying to focus on how it affects you positively and what you learned and how you gained emotionally and spiritually. Most people are not reading books effectively because they're trying to be at the mercy of the author and trying to deliver it like it's a college paper or like something that they have to impress people with. Now, if you do want to impress people, step four is really going to help with that. And that is memorize the author's name and find a one-sentence summary on how that book affected you personally, your personal takeaway. The reason to do this is, first, if you recommend the book or you discuss the book and you remember the author's name, just the act of remembering the author's name and being able to say it extemporaneously, you're really going to impress people at the dinner party or when you're introducing people to it. And it will really help people if you're like, I read this in this book by this author. So they don't have to go through the act of searching through Google, or they might know something about the author, but just not that book. So it's a really good conversation conversation starter and a really good way to make you look smart. The other reason to think of your main takeaway early as you're reading the book is that if you don't happen to finish it, and trust me, we all have tons of books that we have not finished, you're able to still get something out of the book even if you never quite got it done. There are tons of books that I actually might have enjoyed and life just got in the way, and I still can remember because I know the author's name, because I know my personal takeaway, not what I thought the author wanted me to know. I'm able to still have a relationship with that book and know about it effectively. The next step is to watch all the TEDx talks, the Google interviews, the New York Times coverage of the author on YouTube totally for free. Most of these interviews are pretty dry, direct summaries of the book. The authors have spent years with a relationship with this book, and they've codified the main points in these interviews. So when you watch these, you get the main ideas that the author had. You have a personal hidden takeaway that is unique to you, and you know the author's name. You will effectively know what you got out of the book, what the main point of the book was, whether or not you even read it all the way through. Or even more, if you lost a little bit in translation because you were listening to it at 2x while you were doing the laundry. And the final step is to read multiple books by the author or multiple books on the subject to gain more knowledge and effectiveness in when you discuss what it's written about. This is a real good hidden trick, right? If I read 3 books by a given author, especially in the nonfiction realm, I'm going to be much better and more effective with discussing one of those books because I'll either see a progression or I'll see them developing a unique idea. And in my case, I read a lot of nonfiction, so I'll be able to compare the author's work and ideas to other authors on the subject if I'm reading multiple books on the subject. Really good example of this is I read Contagious by Jonah Berger, The Content Trap by Bharat Anand, and Hitmakers by Derek Thompson. All of those books have to do with why content goes viral. Why do certain ideas spread, whether digital or other forms of mass media? By reading those books on 2x over the course of a week while I'm doing other things, watching the Google interviews with the authors, grabbing one unique takeaway from each book. While I'm not an expert on why things go viral, although this is really important to me because I'm on YouTube, I am very effective in discussing the main ideas of these authors. And at this point, because I've watched the interviews, I follow them on social media, I have my own personal takeaways, I can discuss those authors. And if somebody name drops them or somebody wants to have a discussion about their ideas, I'm very competent in doing that. So that is how to read books more effectively step by step by yours truly, Drew Morrissey, for I Read Your Book. If this is your first time watching us, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We will be releasing a lot of content on how to learn more effectively, how to have a great relationship with books, and I'm looking forward to taking this journey with you. At the end of each video, I'm going to ask you a question, so hit me up in the comments. I'd like to know, what more information would you like to learn about how to be more effective with your learning and reading that we could cover in future videos? So if this was a good place to start, but you still have more questions, I want to hear from you in the comments. If there's something that you'd like to learn about reading, how to work with audiobooks, anything like that, I'd be happy to answer it in a video. So see you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I've been your host, Drew Morrissey, for I Read Your Book, and I'll see you on the next one.